Sara Carter, Fox News contributor, investigative reporter, Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. His book now 2 weeks in a row, #1 on the New York Times list, The Russian Hoax, and that is the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Welcome, both of you. Sara, let's start with the new news here that we have, because I think this is now we're getting even deeper into the weeds than we ever thought possible. We now have the fourth highest ranking member of the Justice Department. His wife helped put together this dossier, Nellie Orr, we're told, and that he is selling and meeting with Christopher Steele, who was fired by the FBI, plotting to bring him back, and also the emails revealing that they want to meet with Mueller and feed him this debunked information.
Well, I think it's incredible because I think for a while we've known that Orr played a significant role in what happened during the 2016 FBI investigation into this alleged collusion, Russia-Trump collusion. And I think there was a lot of concern that how expansive the players were, not just Bruce Orr, but there were people within the State Department. We know that. We know there were high-level officials like Victoria Nuland, Sidney Blumenthal, who was friends with Hillary Clinton, Cody Shear, who was also very close to the Clintons, and how all these people intermingled and shared the same information, all the same information that Christopher Steele, by the way, like you rightfully said, Sean, wasn't able to prove. He got this disinformation from Russian sources and from other European sources, and he was not able to prove the majority of it. But it spread like wildfire among these people that wanted to actually stop President Trump from ever becoming president. And if he did become president, well, we see what's happened now. And now what we know is that Bruce Orr was in communication with Christopher Steele consistently.
Explain the nature of these communications, though. I mean, we went over some of this last night, but I mean, as you look through the depth of all of this, I mean, we can start. This is both before and after the election. Before the election, Steele writes to Orr. Remember, Nellie Orr works for Fusion GPS.
She speaks Russian. She's a Russian expert.
Right.
And she was hired for that specific purpose, and also for the specific purpose of her connections inside the DOJ. So all of these people were working in concert with one goal in mind.
Okay, so before the election, you got Steele writing to Orr. I spoke to my old colleagues last week, and they assured me that they would not stand in the way of our re-engagement with the Bureau. Orr texts back, great, I'll pass this along to my colleagues, thank you. And then right after the election, 9 days after the election, months after the Mueller witch hunt was underway, Steele writes to Orr, I am presuming you've heard nothing back from your special counsel colleagues on the issues you kindly put to them for me. He's already fired by the FBI at this point. And his phony dossier that he says he has no clue if it's true, now debunked, he's pushing after the election. And then Steele goes on to say this is disappointing would be an understatement. Certain people have been willing to risk everything to engage with them in an effort to help reach the truth. But there's even more than that. I mean, they literally were trying, I'll go to Greg now, to use the Russian lies that Hillary paid for to lie to the American people and rig an election, not unlike what she did to poor Bernie Sanders. And then after the election, Steele is still involved with top DOJ, FBI people, and they're trying to undermine the president with something we now know not to be true. And I haven't even yet mentioned how that phony dossier that they never verified or corroborated, and has since been debunked, then is used to get not one, but 4 FISA warrants, and lying to FISA judges on 4 separate occasions, and putting forth a fraudulent document, and also purposely withholding other information like, Hillary paid for it, which would have sunk it from the beginning.
It shows you how devious and corrupt James Comey and others and Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice were in their efforts to try to destroy Trump, to frame him for things he didn't do. The FBI knew that dossier was fabricated. They knew that Steele was a liar, and even after they were forced to fire him and could no longer use him under FBI guidelines, they used Bruce Orr as a conduit I mean, talk about an underhanded scheme. And even after Trump is elected and is sworn into office in January of 2017, they keep at it. Why? Well, in addition to wanting to undo the election results, they knew they'd broken the law because they'd used this unverified dossier to the FISA court, and they were desperate to try to verify that which was unverifiable.
Let's explain, because in your column yesterday, you bring in the fact that Strzok and Page are even connected to this, Sarah.
Yes, and I think this is really important, and what Greg said right now is even more important. I mean, they were using it as a back channel, they were piggybacking off of information, which is what they did in the foreign intelligence surveillance application that they took out on Carter Page. So basically, without verifying anything, what they did was they just piggybacked off information that Steele was leaking to the media. And now, according to documents that I have seen, I've obtained a series of them, we know that Orr had actually met with, in his notes, it appears, on November 21st, after the election, several weeks after the election, he had met with none other than Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Joe Pientka, about what? About the probe. He talks about Christopher Steele in these notes. He also talks about Paul Manafort, which I found very interesting. You know, they're going to push forward. There's no prosecution yet. Moving forward with M, which is referring to Manafort, got to contact Steele. And I think this is incredible because the FBI, just like Greg had said and established, the FBI had let him go because he violated all of their laws. They knew it. So they had to have this back channel, and the back channel was Christopher Orr. So
Christopher Steele, you mean?
I mean, Christopher Steele. And what they did was they used Bruce Orr, and we have the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of State all working in concert during the Obama administration to investigate President Trump for none other than Hillary Clinton and the DNC, which, by the way, paid for the Christopher Steele dossier. And we know that Glenn Simpson now is very well involved with Bruce Orr as well. He was in contact with him. It wasn't just through his wife. They had direct contact, and it's all becoming very murky.
All right, so now there are other handwritten documents that I hear are coming out. Do you know anything about those?
Yes, there are a number of handwritten documents. Some of those documents actually, and these ones I have not been privy to, this is according to sources that I've spoken with, actually have Peter Strzok conversations with Bruce Orr. So I think that'll be very interesting to see. What was Peter Strzok saying? What were they conversing about? How were they involved together in this investigation? Another, I think, very important point here is that Lisa Page, remember, was the general counsel of Andrew McCabe. She had no business really being involved, and I've spoken to a number of people about this, in a national security investigation such as Trump at the time. So what was Lisa Page's role? What was McCabe's role? I mean, McCabe has been fired since, but what was his role during this investigation? How did he handle this? Was it just Peter Strzok, or was Peter Strzok reporting to others, like Bill Priestap, who was above him, who we don't hear much about, and then McCabe above Bill Priestap? So these will be very interesting notes to look through to find out. I've heard that Congress has received a few thousand documents. Some have said 200 between text messages and emails and other documents related to this case.
All right, let me go back to Greg on the legal side of all of this. You know, we do have the bought and paid for Russian lies that was used and disseminated by people like Brennan, and we know Steele was briefing the press. We now know he didn't even believe his own dossier. That's all a lie to the American people to swing an election on a lie that is based on Russian lies that Hillary paid for. You got Shiftless Schiff breathlessly talking to a Russian hoaxer who's out there telling him, I've got naked pictures of Donald Trump. I give it to you. I give, tell Vladimir. I will meet him after the election when I have more flexibility. All these incidents, and we never get any movement on the law here. The level of a double standard, it takes my breath away. And I repeat what I've been saying, Greg. If we don't have equal application of our laws and equal justice under the law, we don't have a constitution, and our constitutional republic crumbles.
Yes, and all of these are felonies. One of them is abuse of power, 18 U.S.C. 242. You know it well, Sean. Major fraud against the U.S. is another felony. Conspiracy to defraud the U.S. If you're using a position of power improperly, you're defrauding the government, especially when you're violating somebody's constitutional rights. Carter Page's constitutional rights, President Trump's constitutional rights. The law enforcers were actively the law breakers in this particular case. They were so determined to frame Donald Trump for crimes he didn't commit that they themselves, the top DOJ and FBI officials, engaged in corrupt acts that are crimes. And the irony, of course, is that Mueller is investigating Donald Trump for nothing, when in fact he should be investigating the original investigators who broke the law with impunity.
That's called investigating the investigators, a term we used almost from the beginning. All right, both of you stay there. All right, as we continue with Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett. All right, we don't have a lot of time here. What do we know about 302s that show that Steele kept feeding the FBI allegations after he was fired, after Trump won? Sarah.
Well, what we know is that this is one of the biggest things that Congress has been beating over to try to get the 302s, the interviews with Bruce Orr. And that is going to reveal the most important and most pertinent information would be all of those 302s. They would contain all the interviews with Bruce Orr, how he got the information, particularly from Christopher Steele, how that was passed over to the FBI, to the Bureau, and how he moved it. What we do know is that, and this was thankfully Devin Nunes had it in his Russia report. If you go back to that and read that again, it's even more true today than it was then, now that all this information has come out. The fact that Christopher Steele himself was adamant about not having President Trump win this election was very telling. And I think that the 302s will be very revolutionary as far as
this is really about to explode wide open yet again, and it gets deeper and deeper every time. I'm just out of time, though. Greg, again, congrats. 2 weeks in a row, New York Times bestseller list. Sarah, we'll see you tonight with your breaking news. John Solomon tonight, much more, 9 East.